start the show because that'll give us something to talk about during the show.
Sure.
Extra content.
We're going live right now, you guys. So
All right.
welcome to Spiritual Revolution on YouTube. And where that's going on. And yes, Lee is assisting me today with this podcast because I moved today and my brain is not all there. Mr. Rock.
Hey, it's morning here where I'm calling from in Taipei. So good morning, world. How you doing?
Welcome to Hang on a second, let me stop that. Why is that doing it? And
We're also joined today by Danny Lilly in New Mexico. ABQ, are you in Albuquerque?
Yes. So it's 6:30 here. All right. Nope, 7. It's getting there. Yeah, 7 o'clock.
Right on. Did you have a full day of work today?
Yeah. Very busy day. Just started out the new year just really busy. So just getting everybody organized and getting ready to do some more work on the land. So we're building out a foundation and doing some plans for that land. So the person that owns it, he put up his house on the property now, so he's living there. So there's going to be somebody on the property all the time.
so Adam, just so you know, we are live on YouTube this time, and Lee is going to be asking difficult questions of all of us.
Ah,
I don't know what happened. I got knocked off. It didn't even tell me my computer was going to restart. Sorry about that. But yeah, I got knocked off. Yeah, okay.
Welcome back, Adam Finnegan.
Welcome back.
And you're in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah. Yep. Massachusetts.
Where?
Cape Cod.
oh wow, nice.
I hate Cape Cod. When I was a kid, I used to draw it getting bombed off the face of the earth.
Wow. Why? Where does that come from?
I hated it. Yeah. But it's, I guess, I don't know, maybe it's the air or whatever. It's just really like, it's right near the sea, and it just, I don't know. I like inland more. But it's fine. No complaints, really.
Were you born there?
You know, I was born in Grafton, Massachusetts. So that's like near Worcester, which is like center of Massachusetts. But it's not too bad.
Did you ever go there and visit?
I went there about a year ago because my childhood best friend died from drugs. Unfortunately, he had a kid and a wife, and it was terrible. But yeah, I went down there a while back. It was actually, he died on the 8th of last January. So right up on his anniversary. But I still have some friends out that way. And I lived in Worcester for a while. Big city. And you're in Taiwan?
Yes.
Is that where Matthew Raymer is at? Or is he?
Matthew is south of me in the main island,
Philippines.
Luzon of the Philippines. Yeah, Danny.
Okay.
Danny knows because Danny is his
Half
mother's
Filipino.
Filipina.
Yep.
I like Matthew. Matthew's cool. I talk to him almost every day, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah. On what's it called? Keybase.
Yeah. He
Keybase.
mentioned that yesterday. I gotta check that out. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe it was meant to happen that way.
Sure.
So what is this Keybase?
It's like a messenger, an encrypted messenger app.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Because Matthew spends so much time with technology, more in depth connection than I have with technology, like building, right? And working with developers. And as you may or may not know, one of his projects is Content Safe, contentsafe.co. But
Oh
he also
wait.
has other projects, and he's also been using different messengers or voice over IP, VoIP software. So I've kind of moved away from Skype. I'm using Discord because of autonomy, and I'm using Zoom again because of autonomy. But if there's something else to check out, seems to be the thing to do these days, is to be prepared with alternatives.
Yeah, Telegram,
Yeah.
Keybase.
I don't know if any of you have met or spoken with my friend Brian T. Collins. I met him in Mark Soar's town hall. It's now the Grand Theft World Town Hall. And during one of our second conversation after we connected via email, I asked him about like ancestral knowledge. And I wanted to find out if he knew of any way to get some more information out of our DNA or get some more direct communication with our ancestors. And he mentioned water. He said water really does have memory, and they can also help you with memory. So for example, if you return to where you were born or the place where you grew up and drank from the water in that location again, it might help you remember things.
Wow.
So that's kind of why I asked you about where you were born, Adam, because I wonder if being where you were born is not just something that's nice to have, but it actually gives you things, benefits.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's never really thought about that. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, and I heard things about water, leaving it in a bowl or something while you go to sleep or something. That's something different. But you know who works that Afro Caribbean religion, that Santeria and all that stuff? They use the cowrie shells and stuff. I mean, they do the animal sacrifice, which I don't like that stuff. But I mean, the USDA probably, I guess it's not that much worse than regular people because they eat that food afterwards. But I don't know. Anyway, they work. The whole like thing behind their system is that they work with ancestors, the spirits of their ancestors, and they build these things with like sticks and bones and stuff, and it's really interesting, but it's not really my thing. But there's a really interesting book on it called Society of the Dead, and yeah, that's like the foundation of all of those systems is that they work with their ancestors. But
It's interesting because there are so many religions that work with their ancestors, right? Like the Day of the Dead in Mexico, and apparently the Polish. So in Polish, we have a Day of the Dead, but it's called Remembering the Dead or something, and you're supposed to go to the grave and light some candles, whatever. But apparently, even as recently as 100 years ago, it was called the Day of the Ancestors, and you went to the graves not to remember them, but to reconnect with their spirits and like allow them to speak through you and things like that, like much more esoteric.
you know what I find interesting too is I found like myself just really interested about reading about those systems, and I actually have an ancestor who wrote about the original ones because it all came out of Africa. And there's this book I have called Bantu Beliefs and Magic, and it's written by one of my ancestors who was a philanthropist. Here it is. This is it. Bantu Beliefs and Magic. And it's actually got a introduction by that guy, Sir James Fraser, who wrote The Golden Bough.
Oh wow.
Cool.
Yeah, this guy he was from Britain. He worked for those globalist people, actually, which is not very cool. I'm not really happy about that, but the British East Africa Company.
We're all familiar. We're like, oh yeah, that thing.
Yeah, that awful thing.
Gosh, eh? Gosh, it's not just wealth or power or control or trade or drugs or world domination. They are also interested in spiritual practices, magic,
There you
all kinds
go.
of stuff.
Right
Those
here.
guys are
That's-
getting everything they could out of it.
That's what they say. The thing that shall not be named, that is about to be inflicted rampantly among humans, is to like cutting us off from spirituality. Of course, we're live on YouTube, so we can't talk about that. But you know,
Yeah, it was, but I mean, it was weird because I wrote that the people of the tribe or whatever, offered him to be one of the elders or something like that because he had studied their ways for so long. And
so he
interesting,
wasn't all bad.
huh?
So he wasn't all bad.
No, they liked him. They
So-
obviously liked him, I guess, because they offered, because that's something they don't do for people, outsiders, you know. But I don't know. It's I don't agree with that whole, you know, what's it called? The Empire, that British Empire, that seven-headed Hydra. The British expansion. It was what's the word I'm looking for? Not monarchy.
Alliance, the Anglo-American Alliance.
No, like a imperialism.
Yeah.
I'm not about, you know, I totally wholeheartedly disagree with that whole going to Africa and taking, you know, changing everything and taking people's land. It's terrible.
You know, they said the same thing every time when they colonized Northern Europe. They said, "Oh, those savages, they don't know how to dress. They don't know what to do. They dig in the woods for dirt instead of eating regular food. Let's take them over." And then they went, or first, no, before that, they even went to Africa and they said, "Oh, those savages, they don't know how to dress. They don't know how to eat proper food. Look at them. They're dancing around in their skirts. Let's take them over." And they went to North America and South America and they did that. And they did that in Asia. So basically, it's always the same thing. Oh, look at these. But it's actually documented. It says that about French people. A particular quote. Those savages, they walk around the woods digging in the ground like animals instead of eating proper food. And I'm thinking, France, what would they be digging in the woods for in France? Truffles?
Yeah, I mean, this guy said he did like this introduction in the book, basically saying that he didn't think it was a good idea that they were making these people change their whole lifestyle and accept, you know, a totally different lifestyle. Like what?
That's not a good idea.
Yeah,
It's never a good idea.
but you know how I guess they write, how they are very like intellectual and vague about everything and how they approach everything. They're not like the word things to seem like they're humanitarians, you know. I don't know.
They're never the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Imagine a tribe from Africa decides to take over the US and they go in with their skirts and they're like, "No, take off these terrible restrictive clothes. No, you can't. You're never going to reproduce with those pants on. Take that off. Put on a breezy skirt so you can like live properly, you know? You don't want to be restricted like that. That's just not right. Here's a scientific proof."
yeah. So I wonder sometimes if some of because from the things that he studied, I'm interested in reading about as well, but I'm not really about doing what he did with the imperialism, you know, as a worker. But sometimes I wonder if some of the energy kind of passed down, because I also had a famous writer named George Eliot in my filming tree, and I read her biography, and She's actually a lot like me in personality wise. That was interesting. She wrote fiction. And I have a lot of good writing skills.
That sounds like a great way to connect with your ancestors. Here in Taiwan, they have Tomb Sweeping Day, where people will gather at their grandparents' or their parents' home and then go to the grave sites. And the graves can be elaborate, where there's like a flattened area with rounded sides, and then going into the side of a hill, or like in Canada, we just have like gravestones and might have some statuary, and that might be it. And then a very wealthy family might have like a structure
A
with like perhaps
mausoleum.
multi-levels. Yeah, that's the word, mausoleum. But my
Yeah.
family in Canada does not have that. But here in Taiwan, you can see also that some of them are very large in area and some are small, depending on what the family put in. Some of them have their own roads that go to their particular family ancestral grave site.
I read something about a place in Asia that, like, after someone died, they brought them up on a mountain and, like, dismembered them and fed them to birds or something. And it was, like, customary.
I've heard about.
I've
They
never
didn't
heard of that,
dismember
but
them,
I've
they
heard
just
of like
left
sky
them.
burial in like North
Maybe
America.
maybe they didn't dismember them, but maybe they just left them up there for the vultures to get or something.
I think that's a noble way of dealing with a dead body. Let the animals have it. It's not
Yeah.
good for anybody anymore.
I
Unless
had this idea that I really liked. It was an idea, a new kind of graveyard, right? But and instead of burying in a casket or whatever, the person is, cremated, and then the ashes are mixed in with the soil, and you can be whatever plant you want to be, like where the person plants a seed for whatever it was that you picked to be, you wanted to regrow. Because then it doesn't make it as somber, it's like regrowing from.
it's not as good for nature if we burn the body. It's better for nature to just go back into the soil and get reabsorbed, right?
Or something like that. Yeah. And I was like, I wanted to be a nightshade plant, one of my close plants. That's what I want to be.
Nice.
Why nightshade?
Because those are the plants that I work with and grow and have an affinity for. You ever seen them before? Like the datura and the angel's trumpet? The angel's trumpet's like, the flowers like this big, and they're like absolutely gorgeous. Very like graceful, and they look beautiful. So I've been growing them a while. I'll show you pictures later that I have of them. But the whole story is very interesting, and I also made a whole video about that story and how I got involved with those plants. I'll send it to you later. You can check it out if you want to.
Those videos are on your website, Garden of the Great Work?
Yeah, it's in an article called "The Darkest Shade of Night."
Oh, okay, thanks. I will check that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, it's pretty close to the top. So it's one of the first ones I did. I mean, one of the latest, most recent ones I did.
Welcome, Brandon and Sydney. In case you didn't notice, we are live on YouTube talking to Mr. Lee Michael Stefan Roth, who is asking us questions and telling us how to be better.
Hey guys.
Hey,
Danny,
sorry
how
I'm
you-
late.
Hey, there's no such thing. We're happy you made it here.
A
Danny,
wizard
do you
is
have
never
a way,
late.
or do you have an interest yourself in connecting with your ancestors?
The short answer to that is no. That question came out of left field for me, but yeah, it's I don't know what to say to that. I'm not sure how one would even go about that, or that kind of stuff. Like the question do you have an interest in connecting with your ancestors has too many presuppositions in there that I can't just process all at once like that.
I think he meant on a spiritual level in order to channel something through your body, right? Or no, not necessarily through your
Well,
mind.
I just mentioned that in Taiwan, people will journey to the tombs of their family. They have like what they think of as a hometown. It's usually closely connected to where the grandparents live, especially if the grandparents or the family have been living in a certain location or a certain, even a house for a long period of time. And so a lot of the younger, like my generation age, like 20s to 40s or 20s to 50s, they may have moved to larger cities, but they will return to where their family came from in Taiwan anyway. That I don't know anything about them going back to mainland China or other countries, but yeah. And when I was speaking with Michael Pendergrast, who's in Portland, Oregon, studying traditional Chinese medicine, he was telling me about how he will say, let's see, how did he put it now? My greatest grandmother, my greatest grandfather, send me some information or encouragement or advice, right? And that appealed to me. I tried doing that on the solstice on the rooftop, addressing the stars, because that's where I would choose to look for them rather than returning to Europe or Canada. Yeah.
Funny how you say water was a thing that was something, a channel which could be possibly connect you. Well, that system uses sticks, so I guess the four elements, or
I was
actually,
just thinking, I use water to connect with my family, like across the world. I always go to the ocean, touch the ocean, and talk to the ocean, send them good wishes or whatever, because the ocean's everywhere. I've been doing that since I came to Canada when I was 16. So I don't know, my 16-year-old brain came up with that.
Danny, have you thought about this? Is this something that you've ever
Yeah.
considered yourself?
Short answer is yeah. Especially on my mom's side. Um, I had the benefit of meeting my grandfather. He was a practicing shaman. So, oh yeah. And so,
Cool.
saw a lot as a kid. So, so that's kind of the basis of some of my spiritual understanding is I've seen it in practice from a shaman point of view. And so, I'll give you an example. I'll tell a story. Um, this is in 1980. I was maybe 9 years old at the time. I was there for Christmas holiday, traveling there. At the time, I was living in the United Arab Emirates, and so went to the Philippines for Christmas break and whatnot. And my grandfather helped prepare Christmas dinner, and so just rice, bihon, some different meats, kind of typical Filipino dinner. And he made one extra place setting, um, an extra plate of food, which he placed in the corner of a room while we were all at the table eating. So I didn't understand at the time what the extra plate was for. And anyways, we're eating dinner. I'd look at the plate. There's less food on the plate. I'd eat some more. There's less food on the plate. And this would go back and forth till my plate's done. I'm done eating. That plate in the corner of the room, empty. And so, I asked my mom, hey, what was that about? Because nobody touched the plate. And, she kind of explained a little bit about it. Just, he had spirits around him that helped him with the healing that he did. He did the healing with the laying of hands and everything. He had an understanding of Christianity, but he acquired that from his ancestors. So they had this working understanding of the spiritual world, and it was very integrated with them. But that's how he celebrated Christmas. When people talk about the ghost of Christmas, it's like, yeah, well, I have a ghost story. But he passed away. He lived till he was 99. He was very healthy up until that point. Clean food, clean water, clean air. And he just took care of himself. And so when he passed away, it was just kind of sudden. He just kind of felt weak one day, and then a couple days later, he was gone. So he didn't know English, but I observed a lot every time I'd go visit. But I knew even as a kid that he had this connection spiritually, and there was no gimmicks to it. So when people say, "Oh, maybe you just saw something," or he played a trick on your mind, no, that's bullshit. Okay, because you can't make that plate of food disappear, and I've seen that done 4 times over my life. So it wasn't a one-hit wonder. It was just something. He had Christmas dinner with the people, with the forces that supported him. And so, with your question, yeah, I do want to, because I have instances where I know where I'm in a room and it's just me in there, but I know it's not just me. And so there are other forces of nature at work. That's what attracted me to natural law and learning about that. Because I've had my own little adventures out there, but I've always wanted to. I never got that opportunity to really ask my grandfather about stuff. And he kind of kept my mom out of a lot of that. So my mom has some understanding of it, but some of it's really based on superstition and what the church tells her. And so I have to kind of sift a lot of that out because she has her interactions spiritually. But there are good spirits out there. There are bad ones, and just how do you know good from bad? How do you know what direction to go sometimes? And so I'm just thankful I'm got this opportunity to share the story. Is just I've always I should have asked more questions when I was a kid. You just who'd have thunk it? But if I had that opportunity, yeah, I would have some questions for him and reconnect.
You can ask him now, though.
Yeah, there's some ways to go about it. It's probably better if I did that from back home.
Yeah, but you don't need anybody to it. You can just go into meditation and talk to him, right?
Yeah, and there's times I've seen him in visions, or when I'm in really in a deep meditation, but he's not saying anything. Yeah, there's no dialogue. It's just me trying to talk to him, and he's looking at me in a meditative state, but he's kind of just watching me. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And so I haven't been back to the Philippines in it's going to be 10 years now, and so I'm just curious, if I go back this year or whenever I do. What would I see on my next trip? What would I
Philippines
experience?
sounds like a good place to disappear into for 10 years.
I gotta say something from his story. It's really interesting. That
Hi,
book,
Michael. We're live on YouTube, by the way. Go on, Adam.
that what he just said, that book that I just showed you, this one, Society of the Dead, there is a chapter called Little Corners where they leave food in the corner of a room, just like he was saying. And it was yeah. And they leave food for the dead. It says, me, as from my dead, I'm satisfied giving them the food they loved most in a little corner. There was something about the corner of a room that was significant with that, too. It is interesting because this is this is from Cuba,
Mhm.
so there's kind of a universal nature, I guess, or certain things that are very similar, no matter what part of the globe you're at, and in that kind of practice. Very interesting, though, that he said that.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing that.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that was cool. What other
These stories
challenging?
I find are very encouraging to me, because I, as a younger man, was afraid that all the great things, the cool things, the magical things, the beautiful things were lost to me. But it doesn't seem that way anymore. The more I talk to people like yourselves, that these things are always going to be around, and they're waiting perhaps for you to welcome them or to encourage them, or open communication. I find that very comforting.
Was and also too that the plants that I grow are said they're mostly, I know shamans use those plants, and they're said to be like a gateway to the land of the dead. Those plants. I wrote an article. It's not on my site, but maybe I'll send it to you later. But they anytime that, because sometimes I'll take it medicinally in small quantities to help with various symptoms, and when I fall asleep, I always see people that I knew that are deceased, and so it's really strange because
Sounds
sometimes
sounds like
I'll
the property of the plant. Like that
yeah,
plant does that.
it's supposed to be a gateway to the land of the spirit world, and like some people will burn it as incense, or if you were to take it or whatever, um, they say that it's a gateway to the land of the dead. And every time I fall asleep, when I take it, maybe not every time, but a lot of the time, I will fall asleep and I'll see somebody that I knew that deceased. I saw my best friend a lot when he died. After he died, I saw him a lot. Seen, my grandmother. I've seen all sorts of people, but usually when I fall asleep. Interesting though.
Danny, if no one watching this podcast is aware of his work, has done a lot of work with aquaponics and local food systems. So I've heard you discuss, Danny, some of the nutritional requirements or the best environment for the growth of those plants, and not only plants but also fish within aquaponics systems. And so beyond looking at the chemical analysis or the particular levels of certain necessary substances in those mediums, whether it be water or earth, Danny, have you had some sense of communication with these other living things, like different from that, different from
Um, yeah. For my own personal journey, I had a near-death experience in 2013, and basically, I'll kind of give you a synopsis of the day. Woke up normal. Um I was supposed to train a new employee with the consulting I do for the paint company, and so I was supposed to drive to Santa Fe. It's about 50 miles north of Albuquerque, and so I was supposed to pick him up. We were going to do a sales call for a hotel in Las Vegas, um, New Mexico. So it's on the way to up I-25 going toward Denver. So left Albuquerque without a problem. And I kind of blacked out about 5 miles into it. Don't know where I was, where I went, just blank. And I snapped back into it 10 miles past Santa Fe. So I drove about 50 miles with a blank space. And when I came back into it, I knew there was something really wrong. My mind popped back in, and I'm looking at the freeway, and I'm like, I don't really recognize this road. And, I had to track it through the phone, and I called my employee I was supposed to train, and I figured out I passed Santa Fe. So um, I pulled off to the next exit. Yeah, I was already freaked out because it's like I can remember everything up to where I was 3 years old. To have blank space like that was not good. And so, anyway, met the employee, so he came to me. So I left my car in a town called Pecos, which is just north of Santa Fe. Went on the appointment, but I knew something was really wrong because I could hear my own voice. I could hear my employee. But I was hearing other stuff. We'll refer to it as the signal, because just a lot of stuff was just being said, and I was really disoriented by it. I didn't feel threatened, but I was very disoriented. So go this drive to uh, Las Vegas, which is about an hour away. We did the sales call. So I remember fragments of the sales call, but I collapsed at the end of it. So this new employee, first day on the job, took me to the hospital, and they did an evaluation on me because I was snapping in and out of consciousness and whatnot. And some of it was gibberish. Some of it felt like I was home, but I was carrying a passenger. So I felt like there was a spirit working through me. Doctors did an evaluation, and they admitted me into the hospital. But what was going on? I had pneumonia, so I didn't know I had it. They told me, but the pneumonia was so bad that my oxygen level was, I should have technically been dead. That's what they told me. And so, in fact, I did die in the hospital. They had to resuscitate me because the pneumonia was so bad. um, and they pumped me full of antibiotics and killed the pneumonia and hit with the pads. But the one thing I do remember distinctly, I could see my body being pushed into an MRI. That's how they found or one of the diagnostics did. They did an MRI, found the pneumonia, but I was not in my own body at the time, and I heard this distinct conversation, and I didn't realize who it was toward the end of the conversation because it was one of those things where, well, it's not your time to go, and I wasn't freaked out, but I was like, well, where am I supposed to go? Well, it's not your time to go. Anyway, you'll be fine when it's your time. It's your time. And then the last thing that was said to me was, "Take care of my mom." And I could just tell by the tone in the voice that was my dad. And before I knew it, I woke up in the hospital. I was back in my body and all that other good stuff. And they kind of explained what happened because obviously other people were watching this. So they were more freaked out about it than I was because they went through my medical history. They called my employer. They wanted to know if I was on, because they did a toxicology test on me. They found alcohol in my system, so they did ask me about that. And I told them, hey, I haven't had a drink of alcohol in 3 weeks. So they found the malfunction in my liver, so my liver wasn't processing alcohol. So that was in there. The lack of oxygen, all that other good stuff. So technically, I shouldn't have walked out of that hospital. But I knew from a spiritual standpoint that, I had an opportunity. It wasn't my time. And so I just got out of that hospital. I was like, okay. Not that I was doing anything bad. It's just, you get an understanding that there's more to life than just the mundane and just your daily activity. And so that just lit a fire into my ass. That's, let's say it that way. And one thing led to another, and discovered Mark Passio's work, and through that I found Richard's work, and that's how I got here. But there was a lot of influence on starting the sanctuary at ABQ, and that's the story behind it. It was the near-death experience.
Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting. Thanks. Anyone else?
Yep.
I'm glad you made it.
No, I'm
that
glad I made it, but you
it's
know, I
become
you
your
know,
friend.
just I could tell that story from a firsthand perspective, and because people have asked, well, we heard what happened to you. How do you feel about spirituality? And the truth of the matter is, there is another side to this. And it's not hokey. There are rules. There are forces of nature. There is good and evil, and the reality of it is, what world do you want? And so, while we're here, let's make it as good a world as we need to make it.
I completely agree. I prefer the world of communication with those, because I prefer not to believe that they're lost or separate from me. Like the person I most miss is my grandmother. And so sometimes and I also speak of her as she is a great person rather than in the past tense. But I haven't had kind of direct communication like that.
It was a really interesting story.
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming. I tell you. just, just never know when it'll happen.
Agnieszka, I've seen you smoke and roll joints and that kind of thing, but do you ever get a sense, or have you ever wanted a plant or used a plant to help you or to encourage certain experiences for yourself?
Usually when I have certain experiences, it's without plants. Like I find I can tap into those. Like it's almost like the opposite, almost like I smoke joints so I can have more focus on the day to day than like traveling between realms. So I don't know. It sounds kind of weird, but yeah, it does help me with focus.
It does not sound weird to me. I was in Peterborough, Ontario, and I was talking with my friend and a Anishinaabe medicine woman, and I asked her about seeing things. I said to her, "It seems to me there's a lot going on, but I don't see it. I'm sure there's more going on than I'm aware of." And she said, "Well, for some of us, we see too much, and we, like you just described, perhaps would like to have a break from that, or less of that, or modification of that." Yeah, go on.
I also found that too, when I would burn as an incense the plant around me, I'd have the same experience. So it wouldn't mean that I just have to take it internally. It could be in the air, like incense.
I wouldn't mind trying some of your plants that you have with, I gotta check, there's a weird noise. Be right back. But yeah, I wouldn't mind trying some of your plants.
Mine?
Yes, yours.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I can send you some of the foliage. I also sometimes will smoke it, but just burning it too is like it would have that effect. But I can send you some if you want.
I used to buy incense, and there's a lot of shops in Taiwan because many people are making offerings at the temples, but also many people have small shrines in their homes, and there could be a loved one that's passed on, and so they might have the nameplate of that person there, or a family nameplate. Some families, like the wife of my ex-wife's family, they have a temple that they run as a business in their village, and so people will go there for festivals or will go there and specifically request certain services. And back to what you said earlier, Adam, about sacrifice and people making sacrifices of animals and then eating the animals.
Yeah.
That I've not seen that done in Taiwan, but they will make offerings of fruit and vegetables and things, and then take that home, and then eat that. But I've never seen animals like done that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I walk by these like small shrines that are all in every direction here in Taiwan and Taipei, and I just bow my head, or I will specifically bow to show respect. When I moved to a new place, I went there and made offerings of incense that they have at the temple there for that purpose. You make donation to the temple, and then you have some incense. And usually there's like 3 sticks of incense. And so you might address the outer direction and then the inner temple, whoever is in that temple. And then there might be another outbuilding or another god or local deity that's in that part of that complex. And then so each one gets the stick of incense kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to get that place for my teaching class, there was on that street there a little shrine, and I asked my friend about it, and he said it's a Chinese deity that travels around the world with the Chinese speaking people, and that particular guy is meant to help things go smoothly on the Earth's surface, not like of the sky or of the water or under the earth, but specifically on the ground, like on human level kind of thing. So I didn't have anything. I just asked my friend for a cigarette. I left a cigarette there as an offering before we went to meet the landlord and had a meeting. And it went well. It went really well. It went very smoothly. So now every time I pass by there, I stop and just bow. And I think I left a banana there one time.
You know, the sacrifice doesn't have to be large. If you're asking the forest for information or for energy or for whatever, you can, like, I sometimes leave a roach, or I pour out some of my wine, like the Roman style, or I pour out some of my coffee even. It's a sacrifice. You're going to drink this whole cup of coffee, but then if you pour out like a quarter of it, then you don't have as much. It's like, it's still a sacrifice. It's just not a large one, right?
I do that too with wine or beer. And I was taught again, I picked up a lot of things from the Anishinaabe in Canada. And they say things like, they say, for all my relations, right? Whether that's the flyers or the four-leggeds or the swimmers, those are all relations. Go on.
I did sweat lodges with a Wampanoag elder around here, and that's what we'd say, for all my relations, and aho.
So
Yeah.
before I found this apartment, like, I talked to the landlord or through a third party just Christmas, but I wasn't able to see it till after New Year's. So on New Year's Eve, I had some golden champagne, like with gold flakes in it. And I went to the edge of the jungle and I stood there and I asked for a blessing for me looking for this apartment and having like a good experience and having a good landlord and not having to put up with any bullshit or whatever. And I poured out like half my glass of champagne into the, like, right directly into the jungle. And then I saw them on Saturday right after New Year's, and I rented it, and now I'm here, and it's Tuesday. Yay! And it's so weird. I don't understand, how is it possible for the apartment to be nicer the second time I come than the first time? Like, everything is better. I'm like, well, I didn't notice this, and oh, I didn't notice this. You know what I mean? So I have a question for you guys, because maybe you're more into this kind of esoteric stuff, because I'm like a total maverick, so I do everything on my own way. But in this apartment, there's a pentagram above the door, or like on the door, and there's one above the entrance to the kitchen, but it's the one where the man is standing up, right? So that's the witchy one, right?
Yeah.
Not the one where the man is upside down,
No, that's the
goat head.
one
No.
with its right side up is supposed to be kind of like, Wicca or I guess European shamanism, because that's really all it is.
So
Even
then, so on the inside, above the front door, there is well, what is it called? It's like has 8 sides, circle thing with 8 sides, rhombus,
Octagon.
octagon, and so this is right above the door, and then right next to the door, there's a triangle, and though both of these are mirrors. And right next to the door, underneath the triangle, there is like a key thing, but it's got Mother Mary on it, and it says, I don't know, rules in our hearts or watches over our hearts or something like that.
maybe it's the Lady of Guadalupe.
Yeah, it's the Lady of
Could be.
Guadalupe.
Hmm.
I just wasn't specific enough with my Marys, okay? But the Lady
Oh,
of
no, this is-
Guadalupe is another conundrum too, because that whole Guadalupe temple was again one of those Isis temples, wasn't it? So the Lady of Guadalupe is actually Isis. And so are we, like, when she's on this plaque here by the door, is she the Lady of Guadalupe, or is she Isis, or is there a difference, or is she just the goddess? Whatever the goddess happens to be in this time, space, and whatever. Like the feminine principle.
there could be synchronization, or they could. It's said that they have like connections where each system, one will represent something from someone else, like Mother Mary will be synonymous with Isis or the Lady of Guadalupe, and can bring the same things, whatever it is associated with. I know Isis is associated with water.
It's so weird. New houses have all sorts of weird sounds that I'm not used to. Just saying. No Google. I'm like, what is that? What
You
is
know,
that?
they like to leave the alcohol in a lot of these systems too. Like on the, I know in Mexico there's a system called brujeria, and they like to pour or leave like um alcohol, bottles of alcohol or nips at the grave and for the spirits.
No Google.
I hear some weird stuff too.
Hear it.
It's not like a regular fan. It sounds like a fan, but there's all this variation to it. Like there's something. Do you hear that? You can't hear it? No? Oh, never mind. Now it's gone.
So that could be
Sounds
my
fun.
air conditioning too, right?
Yeah, but it sounded like it was going in a tube or something. Like, you know, when you listen to
Yeah,
those.
so somebody upstairs is moving furniture, but the first time when they started doing it, it sounded like it was at my front door, but I think perhaps it was above my front door on like the next floor up. But like I said, I'm not used to any other sounds in this apartment, and I thought somebody was at the door, and I don't know. But apparently, most of these people will leave, and I'll have this whole complex to myself with like 3 other families in a few days. So let's see if that really happens. So that could be cool. I hope they still make ice cream. So Lee, how's this conversation going? Are you getting everything you wanted out of it?
There's always more, way more than I hoped or expected. Never knew, but I'm always sure that that'll happen. Like I didn't know and these things, these details of Danny's life. But now I heard some interesting things from him. It makes me
Yeah.
think too that we have or we can have or accept a lot of richness to our lives. Like Danny used the word mundane, right? But that's a part of what we have and what we can experience and enjoy. Last week I had a conversation with my family, some of my family, because there's more than just the 3 of them that were on the call from Slovenia. And I mentioned to them again about part of one of my dreams is to get our family farm back where they're well, for example, it's Robert and his wife Petra and their son Ty Lee. And I named my son Aku Robert because my cousin named his son with my name as his son's middle name. So I did the same with my son. And I mentioned our farm, the family farm, and getting that back. I feel a little bad about it, almost as if I'm like teasing them because I haven't done that yet. I don't know how that will happen or if that will become possible in my life. I just wanted them to know that I think about it all the time. I shared the screen of my computer while I was on the Zoom call with them. And then because I showed them that the background I chose on my float profile, float.app/Rufong, has a picture from Slovenia, this like underground stream of water there that's from the Karst region. There's a lot of hollowed out land there and a lot of underground water moving through that part of the country. But then I was looking at other pictures, showing them pictures from family pictures from 2014, 2013. And then again, there's a whole bunch of other pictures of Slovenia, not related to our family specifically, but I'm always looking for beautiful pictures of Slovenia. I think about that place all the time.
So that would be your ancestors speaking to you. Have you ever been there?
Yeah, that's why I know their faces, and I saw them in 2003. So I should write down some goals
Are
about
they
that and not
related
let
to
it be.
your mother or your father?
My father. My father was born there. He came to Canada when he was 4 years old. They went over the border into Austria and then through Austria by way of ship, literally, to Canada. But I'm not so interested in talking to my father, but I'm very interested in talking to my Slovenian ancestors. So I wonder if I never saw a spring on the farm property, but we didn't spend a lot of time there. And so I didn't walk over every inch of it. I just saw the house, the farm, the house, like my house where my father was born, not in a hospital, but born in that farmhouse on the land there. But I wonder if there's water there or what would happen to me if I started drinking the water from there. I want to check that out.
Oh, I wanted to say something earlier for Danny. Have you ever heard Justin talk about how when you plant seeds, you put them in your mouth and you mix them with your saliva and then you implant your own genetic DNA onto the seed so then it becomes more better for you?
Heard
You've
that
heard of this, correct?
before. Yeah, I haven't done it myself, but I might try that for the next round that I do.
Do you make a compost tea, Danny? Do you ever do that?
For aquaponics, it would help, but I currently don't use that. Basically, it's a potting soil that I use for um, for germination in combination with the aquaponic water. So I use that for starters. And then once it gets to a certain height, then I can just drop it right in the system. But there are other inputs that I could use. So I might try the saliva thing. The good thing is the seeds I get are pelleted. I don't know if you're familiar with pelleted seeds, but you can request these. And so a pelleted seed has a clay coating over the seed. So it doesn't hurt the seed. It actually preserves it a little bit longer.
Lick it off before you put your saliva on there?
Yeah, so I end up swallowing it. But yeah, so there's this clay coating on there. It's just so it's easier to handle them. So I can just take a handful of seeds and I could place them in the actual pods in the aquaponics, so they're easier to handle. It's just especially like with the lettuces and certain greens, the seeds are so small that it's hard to put one seed in one pod. Not that seeds are expensive, but sometimes they don't grow right when you put more than one seed in a pod. But I'm gonna try that. In fact, we're gonna start another round in 2 weeks, so we'll see what it does.
Have you
Yeah.
ever converted a swimming pool into an aquaponics setup?
I haven't done it personally. I was going to help on one in Arizona. Just didn't get the chance to go out there. So we don't have very many swimming pools here in New Mexico. Um, but the guy that wanted to do this in Arizona, that would have been a good opportunity because when they were done, um, they never sold the food, so they just used it for the neighborhood. So they converted it into kind of a community garden, um, and it kind of just fed everybody in the neighborhood there. And the guy that was heading that project was actually he started the Aquaponic Association here in New Mexico, and he just retired and just wanted to go to Arizona, and that was kind of the first project he got tied into was that. Um, but yeah, if nobody's using a swimming pool, I mean, that'd be the first thing I convert it into is that
Oh,
easy.
when you mentioned Justin, he described it to me as he creates like a compost tea, and then he will sip it, drink from it, and then expel back into the compost tea. And so he describes it as updating his microorganisms with the microorganisms in the compost tea that's going to go into the soil, and that's something going on
There's
there.
there's actually a
And
lot of science in that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. I'll give you an example. Let's see.
Ritual revolution, where you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. So this is not compost. You're welcome to research it. It's called Ion Gut Health, and I learned of this from Dr. Zach Bush. And so this is one of his products. But what it is, it's derived from soil. So it technically is liquefied compost. But what it does is actually help with your gut biome to make things more bioavailable and tighten up your intestinal tract. Um, so
Oh.
it's one of those things I'm taking right now. Yeah, there's been a lot of research done on this, and but basically it's liquefied compost, for lack of a better
They
term.
have it in Mexico. That sounds great.
Yeah,
Totally.
So
When you say tighten up your gut, is that like the opposite of leaky gut syndrome, or?
yeah, and that's kind of, let me read it right off the label here. And so we look to the intelligence of nature for answers. This gut strengthening, brain boosting, soil derived liquid is her gift to you and to your microbiome. And so this actually helps strengthen the molecules in your digestive tract. So it heals like leaky gut syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, um, because the average diet now, um, biggest enemy out there is the glyphosate. It gets into your digestive tract, kills a lot of the healthy um, gut biome that's in there, but it starts eating away the lining in your intestines, and so that glyphosate actually starts to get into your bloodstream, and that's what.
But you know what glyphosate is designed to do?
It kills everything.
No. It's more specific than that. What glyphosate does is for the bugs that eat it, it causes perforations in their intestinal tract. That's the actual what it's designed to do in the bugs, and then it causes the same thing in humans, but it's not related. I mean, it doesn't cause the same thing in humans. It's just a coincidence
Right.
that the same side effect happens to the bugs, and then humans eat that wheat. And so I've been watching this series of videos about Mexico, traveling in Mexico, because I want to learn a little bit more about the place I'm living in now. And this girl said, the lady that does the videos, she said that when she lived in the United States, at one point she could not eat anything. She was down to 6 foods. Like she could eat rice and cabbage and parsley and you know what I mean? Like 6 foods, literally. And she said everything was giving her either a migraine or a stomach upset, or there were all this like long list of side effects. And she said she went to Mexico and she started like expanding her food and she wasn't sick. She started eating cheese. She hadn't eaten cheese in years. She started eating and now she eats like normal food. She only can't eat the stuff that she's actually allergic to, like that actually, you know, the stuff that she was allergic to before her gut started. But she said that because of the fresh fruits and vegetables and you know all of this that's available, Mexican food is really good, really healthy, and like it's amazing. Like even the tomatoes that I had for dinner today, they were like actual like fine ripened tomatoes, you know, and they were just from the street market. They weren't like anything special.
Nice.
Danny,
Probably.
in your experience, is there any relationship with pesticides to the allergies that people experience, or what some people describe as allergies? Could they be sensitivities to materials, chemicals, compounds that are not appreciated by the body? Definitely not with ingestion.
Or the denatured GMO stuff that your body just can't, doesn't know what to do with.
Yeah, and so it's a combination of things. The GMOs definitely aren't good for you, no matter what anybody will tell you. The glyphosate is a big problem because there's different versions of it out there, and so thankfully I don't need it in aquaponics. And even if I could use something like that, the problem is it'll get into the water and you'll kill the fish. And so that's usually the first barometer of if there's something really wrong in the system. I got dead fish. So, uh, because people tell me all the time, Danny, you're going to kill a bunch of fish doing this. And thankfully, I've only done it one time, and that was from that was actually a motor that blew out. That it was the wrong kind of motor, so it leaked gear oil into the system, and it killed my fish immediately. And it got all over everything. So that was 3 months of cleaning that whole system out. But yeah, pesticides, any kind of fake fertilizer with the. I look at it like this: if you can't pronounce it, or if you're having trouble pronouncing it, it shouldn't be on your food. There's natural ways to grow food without pesticide. In fact, depending on who you ask from a farmer perspective, um, if you don't need pesticide, that means because the plant has a natural defense against predators.
Then you have to share the plant, and there may be a couple bites taken out of the leaf of the lettuce, and people can't have that. You can't have like a 1/100th of the lettuce leaf missing because somebody took a chunk. Somebody
Right.
protecting your lettuce from other things that were more worse.
Yeah. And so in everything we do, there's not. I mean, the closest thing I use to a pesticide in a bottle, it's neem oil, basically.
That's a great one.
Yeah, or lemon juice. In fact, I may not have it here. I have an aphid trap that I'm going to test for this year. But basically, it's just a yellow box with Vaseline in it. That's all it's in it, because some of the aphids are attracted to yellow. And I tried this last year, and it worked pretty good. As I took a plastic yellow cup and just coated it in Vaseline, and the bugs were attracted to it. And so I found that I was just reading a Facebook post, and I was like, well, hell, I'll try it. Why not? And it wasn't bad. So there's different things that are out there. And as you start working with more, especially the ancestral farmers, they're just going to have a wealth of knowledge that's not really in a book somewhere, or and especially from around the world. Just the more rural you'll get, there's just people that just know things that you wish you knew. So
bringing this back to spirit and spiritual evolution, the sense I have now is that when people are not aware of practical methods to communicate or relate or to contact or to observe or listen to things that are outside of their experience or are not very familiar, it seems to be something based on something fake or not real. But when you have instead been introduced to these things and shown perhaps like the mechanisms of them, it becomes less like magic and more like a part of your reality. Is that like Agnieszka? I think you spend more time than I do on spiritual matters. Does it seem to be very mechanical and a well
I
integrated
don't
system?
know.
And
I
not
wouldn't
something?
say it's mechanical. I would say it's like the creation process where you put out like it's all based on thoughts and emotions, right? The emotions give a certain vibration to your thoughts. So if you're feeling down in the dumps, your thoughts will have this low vibration, right? But then they're like magnets, so they attract more low vibration situations that have that same vibration as you do, right? And then if you're feeling high on life, like whoa, this is awesome, right? Like for example, I was thinking about that today because this whole day has been perfect. Like I mean, I didn't get any sleep and I'm all sore and everything is whatever, but I love the apartment, I love everything about it, I love the grounds, I love everything. But I was still a little bit negative this morning and I was still like grouchy a little bit and stuff. And then when I got to the ice cream store, it wasn't open. And I was like, okay, so I know that my vibration wasn't high enough for ice cream. I can get ice cream tomorrow. It's not a problem. But for tonight, to round it up, it would have. But then also, should I have gone to the ice cream store by myself? Am I strong enough in Spanish to make sure I'm not allergic to the ice cream that they're producing that is without gelatin because they make it at home? Maybe I should go with Fernando the first time to make sure that like it's not something that's gonna make me sick. So maybe it's all for the better. And maybe I just perceive it as a less good thing. Maybe it's more good thing because I'm not on the shitter for the next 5 days. Anyway, yes, the vibration thing is it's very interesting, and I think it ties into what cathedrals are. The picture at the front of the cathedral above the door, it's always a round circle with like a flower or something on it. And somebody on YouTube's figured out that if they put sand on a plate and put it on top of like a speaker and play a certain frequency, that same pattern will show up on the sand. So depending on the frequency that they play, the different pattern shows up. And then I was looking at the cathedrals and churches, and they have different flowers, right? Each one has a different flower. So I wonder if that particular vibration that the flower represents is what the organ actually delivers when you get in that particular church. And knowing that our ancestors were so much better at symbology than we are, maybe each church had like a different function. Like if you're depressed, go to this one with this kind of flower. And if you have like a stomach ache, go to this one with this kind of flower. But that's just total conjecture. I'm just like fantasizing. It's interesting, but yeah.
Which makes me think that perhaps, I'm sure I had ancestors that could not read Latin, but they may well have been able to read every single plant, tree, fungus, bird, animal that
It's
was
way
around.
beyond that.
They read that like a book.
Yeah, each church and each building has like symbols on it. They could read all those symbols.
Mm.
Like what I was asking about above the door and stuff. Sorry.
Mm.
So what, are we going to close out this popsicle stand? Are we round of subjects, topics? I
And-
mean, we could talk forever, but
Back to Adam. I was thinking those plants, like the nightshades you mentioned, you could use the word incense or you could use the word medicines, right? I used to buy incense.
is different jurisdiction than medicine. I would put the word incense.
But he said that those plants, the burning of those plants evokes certain feelings and
Yeah, but
experiences.
for like official business, like mailing it or whatever, I wouldn't say it's medicine or
Oh, right. But I mean,
hallucination.
like in his discussion of it.
Oh,
in his discussion of it, yes.
it is like a friend to me, I guess. Like it has a definite spirit, a feminine spirit. It has a feminine spirit behind it, and a very powerful one. It's like a feminine spirit, but it has like a very powerful force to it. I think it's too intense for most people. I'm intense as it is, so like I'm an intense personality, so we click very well, you know. Uh, it's so interesting how I came around to find that plant, but when I researched the history, that was the thing that was just mind blowing because it's actually listed in Sumerian tablets. They used to give it to people who were depressed from demons. They used to give it to people to cure depression caused by demons, it said. And this was in the clay tablets in cuneiform. It was belladonna, which is one of the nightshade plants. There's belladonna, henbane, those are from Europe. Mandrake, that's also European. Then there's angel's trumpet, which is kind of like South America, also in parts of Asia, all the way down to, I know my friend from the Mauritius Islands said that they called that night queen there because she likes to bloom at nighttime. She blooms at nighttime and the moths pollinate. And it's funny, night queen, see the woman, feminine spirit, and all over the globe and different cultures, they all talk of the plant having a feminine spirit, whether it's, you know, all the way down there or in South America and Mexico and southwestern United States. They say it's a female plant and she's a power spirit. And
I think all of the nightshade family plants are feminine in energy.
I
The
think
rose and the potato, I think they're all feminine.
I think the tobacco is a male though. From
Oh,
people that I've
tobacco.
talked to.
There's truth to that.
That's a nightshade too. Sorry.
Yeah, it is. It's a different one, but I've always gotten the feeling that the tobacco plant was a male energy or something.
Yeah, I agree there. I didn't realize when it's a nightshade. What did you say, Danny?
My grandfather used to refer to tobacco as a spirit because he had this peace pipe, and it was a combination of tobacco and some other things in it, and just that was his thing. And so one year we visited. I think I was 13 at the time. Me and my dad's like, well, let's bring him some American tobacco and have him try it out. That made my grandfather so damn sick. And we felt bad about it. It's like, oh, we fucked up. Because it's like, yeah, I didn't know about the tar and all the other chemicals and stuff.
Formaldehyde, arsenic,
Yeah.
cyanide.
Yeah, I didn't know about all that. So, but because, I mean, that was his thing. He smoked this natural. It was tobacco and some other things. So I don't know what it was, but he was cool with it. That was his thing. But yeah, there's nothing in an American tobacco that will duplicate that. In fact, yeah, my grandfather got like, it was the only time I ever saw him sick. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, me too. So yeah, that's not for shamanic practices.
But maybe for sacrifice.
Yeah, that didn't go well.
I've read that the curing process as well, not only just the chemical additives of like addictive additives but the way that it, like cooking it as opposed to sun drying it, has an effect as well. I used to smoke tobacco made by the Balkan Sobrani company, and it tasted quite a bit different than cigarettes. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had some native tobacco that was really sweet and gentle and cuddly.
Danny, you are I've done a lot with growing food. Have you ever grown or thought of growing or been encouraged or considered growing some of those plants that are not so food orientated, that are either
Ah,
medicines or
um, I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, and so that might be something that there's actually a discussion on a greenhouse that's about 300 miles south of here, um, where they're not growing anything in there now. It's just but it was done for hemp. And so there's been a dialogue to see if I could go in there, use part of it for hemp and part of it for hops. Um, we have a lot of breweries here in New Mexico, a lot of craft brew, and nobody's growing hops around here. So it's an opportunity to do a high dollar crop. And then the guy that actually owns the land is a USDA advisor for hemp and cannabis. That's his industry. So he knows I haven't delved into it. If the opportunity is there, then I have the perfect guy to ask. um, yeah, because I think one of the things that's holding up the industry now is um, how do you word it? How to measure the THC in the plant. If it goes over a certain threshold, then they can't use it for commercial hemp. I think that's how it's worded.
You know what's
But yeah,
interesting? So like I'm a daily pot smoker, and I used to buy the ones with the high THC, like 21 or something, right? Trying to get better high. And then there was this stuff on sale. It had 3% THC, but it was like I don't know, for some reason it was like $17 a quarter or something like that, or an eighth. And I was like, oh, I'll try it. I'll see what it's like. And I rolled a joint of it, and I was expecting just to have the pleasure of smoking and not really getting much out of it. But and I got just as stoned as from regular weed. And then I started talking to people about it, and they were talking about terpenes and things like that. But yeah, so it's interesting how there was a lot more to it than the 3% THC, which didn't bother me at all.
yeah. And so the reason I get the question all the time is there's been this long debate on whether the stuff can be grown better in aquaponics is hydro. And the truth is, yes, you have better creative control in aquaponics. And just based on what I know, yeah, I could probably grow some pretty good pot. But um, if I'm going to do it, well, there's actually people on my team that are more experienced on it, especially when you talk about the terpenes and certain additives you put in the water for whatever extra mineralization you need. But the improvement overall is based on just the water immersion, the extra nitrogen and the extra oxygen that's being pumped in the water. So you get the plant to grow faster. So you get speed, you do get more quality control, a lot more quality control. And you can pretty much grow it wherever or whatever amount you need. So there's just, uh, to do it on a commercial level, I don't know yet. We'll see where the year goes.
I've
You know,
visited some growing operations that focused on that particular plant and increasing the yield of the flower so that they had a more product, right? When a person or a growing operation is using light to, so it's like the cycles. There's like the flowering cycle. There's like growth cycle, and using a light and having timers on these lights so that they maximize the growing of these plants. When you know of these techniques, Danny, does that seem cruel or unkind to living things to treat them this way, or am I naive and that's just a product?
No, because um, just even in the context of this conversation, plants do have a consciousness to it. And so when light is discussed, I always like to use natural light. You know, these plants grew without LED bulbs and all that other stuff. And so when you do things in a natural context, nature has a way of rewarding you. The more you deviate from that, now you play with fire a little bit. And so in aquaponics, even some of the things that I do is respectful to nature. Especially on the fish side. And I'm getting a lot of feedback on the audio.
Sorry, I think my microphone was going crazy.
Ah,
But you know what, gentlemen? Maybe what we should do is close up live and we can still chit chat and hang out for a little bit. But I'm really tired and I would feel better if I could just like lean back and listen to you talk.
that's fair.
So let's do that. This was a really lovely discussion. We haven't been live for a while and I think it's fun. Thank you very much, Lee, for facilitating and pushing me to go live.
I really enjoyed this discussion today. Yeah.
Has been. And we have like a variety of stuff on Spiritual Revolution, basically whatever we feel like, and sometimes guests. But during, like the last couple months, I just kind of like did the tarot readings and that was fine too. It's all good. It's all good. So thank you very much for your participation and we'll see you soon, probably next